Hello everybody and welcome to a review discussion on A Plague Tale Innocence. Now, A Plague Tale Requiem is out in 2 days. I believe the 18th, it's now the 16th, and I'm going to record this and upload it today. But a while ago I finished A Plague Tale Innocence, and I think this is probably the best AA game I have ever played. I mean, when I think of really good AA games, I can't really think of anything that's even close to this on the level of quality. I think, like just to start it off, I think A Plague Tale Innocence is the highest quality AA game I've ever played, and it's almost like it's if you gave a team that has the capabilities, maybe not exactly the capabilities, because Naughty Dog they are, the elite level, but if you give a team that has very similar capabilities to what Naughty Dog can do, but you give them like half of the budget, and they just made an amazing game that actually has a lot of parallels to The Last of Us by it's more about the characters rather than the story. The world is a great setting, but even still the main part of the game and why you play it is because of the characters. So this, once again, is going to be a more casual video. Treat this like a podcast. It's just basically me rambling about A Plague Tale Innocence because Requiem's out in 2 days and I cannot wait. But Mario and Rabbids is out, Plague Tale Innocent or Requiem, God of War is out soon, Gotham Knights, Sonic Frontiers, Pokemon, so there's a lot to cover in the next couple of weeks. So this is why I'm kind of doing these sorts of videos, because it is very, very difficult to keep up with all these releases and make full reviews. So I'm going to do A Plague Tale Innocence, and then I will play A Plague Tale Requiem and God of War, do videos on that. But just to set it up, so I have a few notes here if you see me looking off. So the game is about like a French noble family, and you play as Amicia, who is this French lady, I guess would be the word. And I don't know if they're exactly royalty or they might just be nobility, but they have their own town and their own keep, I guess. And she has a brother named Hugo, and Hugo is sick with some disease that kind of slowly gets revealed. I'm not going to spoil, I'm not going to completely spoil the game here. There will be minor spoilers, but Hugo is sick with this disease, and you don't really know what the disease is. And because he has this disease, Amicia and Hugo's mom constantly looks after Hugo and kind of neglects Amicia, and Amicia is definitely shows resentment because of that, if that's a word. And she doesn't really like Hugo because they're never really allowed to interact because he's always been sick. So they don't really have a relationship, which is a really good place for the game to start, because the game is all about Hugo and Amicia's relationship. And from that being the starting point, it is very strong. So how the story begins, you're going out, I think, hunting with your dad, and you have your dog. And, you're running along, and then all of a sudden, your dog dies, and, that's how they start the game. Your dog dies very quickly, and you're like, oh, I know what sort of game this is going to be. And you don't really know what killed him at the time. Now, obviously, A Plague Tale is about rats, so you can obviously make an assumption. And then the Brits invade, as they like to do. And they kill they kill your family, and then you and Hugo are forced to flee. And that's where the game really kicks off. And it's kind of where the whole basis of Hugo and Amicia's relationship starts, because, as I said, they don't really like each other. Well, not that they don't like each other, they're just not given enough time to see each other as kids. And Amicia's maybe 15, and Hugo's 6, maybe 7, I don't know. And from there, it becomes an escort mission. And you're probably thinking escort missions are crap. But when escort missions are done well, they are done very well. I mean, Bioshock Infinite's a great example. The Last of Us, again, is a great example of an escort mission. But in this game, you actually have control of Hugo, so you can tell him to stay. You can move him. If you see a vent that he can crawl into, you can move him. So you do have some control over him, and he can be seen. So Hugo is your escort. No, that sounds a bit weird, but you escort Hugo throughout the game, okay? And then I think my initial thoughts on the game was like, whoa, this game is absolutely gorgeous. Now, obviously, I'm playing the PS5 version, which was free on PS Plus, which is great. And yeah, the game is just absolutely stunning. The environments are the fact that the setting is really interesting because it's set in like old-timey France. I don't know what century, but you know, around I'm gonna take a guess at 1600s. I don't know, around like, you know, within somewhere around that time frame. Like there's medieval knights and stuff running around. I probably got my time frame all off there, so someone's gonna, well, like medieval, what's in this time? But anyway, so it's set around that time. Like there's castles, there's medieval knights, and the Brits are invading everyone, as I said, as they like to do. Have to get some Irish joke in there. And yeah, it's like I've never really played. I haven't really played too many games in that setting, which is good because obviously the more unique the setting, the better. And one thing that I actually did in this game was I played the first half in English, and you can hear that the voice actors either are putting on or are French or, you know, of around that region. So they have that sort of accent when they're speaking English, which I mean, fair enough. It is a French game, so it makes sense. But I didn't really like the accents. The accents were a bit jarring. So about halfway through, I turned on subtitles and played it in French, and it made the game so much better because, I don't know, it's just cool. And it's like, I did French in school for 6 years, so there were certain little bits that I could pick up, and even though they are speaking very fast, there was like certain sentences where even without the subtitles I would have been able to get the gist of it. So it was kind of cool. It was like a cool little mental exercise. But I played the second half of the game in French, and I advise everybody to play it in French with subtitles if you can manage subtitles. I know some people just really dislike subtitles, so fair enough. But yeah, play it in French, and it just makes the setting even cooler. And then on top of that, it's not only that the setting is cool, like the actual area, it's set around a plague, like the Black Death, spread by rats. And as I said, the game is beautiful. Like you're walking through the French countryside and there's like yellow orangey leaves falling from the trees, and the weather effects are really nice. And it kind of has these moments where it's really calm. You're like walking by a river, and again, this is going to be a bit rambly, but then I have to talk about the kind of like childlike, because every character in the game is a child, every main character. Eventually you like meet other characters that kind of join your cause, but you're all like, I'd say the oldest character is probably like 18, maybe even younger. Like you're all teenagers or kids. And yeah, there's loads of little moments sprinkled in with the, you know, the dire situation of like Hugo and Amicia screaming into a courtyard to hear the echo, or, you know, they're running by a river and Hugo's like runs over and he's looking at the bank of the river looking for fish and stuff. And I think that's one thing. I'm gonna actually keep drawing comparisons to The Last of Us because I did only recently play that and it did remind me of it, where I think even though Ellie was definitely acted older than her age, you could still see that she had that childlike wonder in her, and that kind of made The Last of Us story significantly more compelling and realistic. And they do the exact same thing here. And yeah, there was just like some really endearing moments there. So back to the setting. So as I said, like there's really beautiful parts of the world, but then it's contrasted with how, like, even the dark and dire stuff, like the plague-ridden towns and the rat's nest, like the rat's nests are absolutely disgusting to walk through, but they're still beautiful, if that makes sense. You know, maybe beautiful isn't the word, maybe, you know, cool looking or something, because I wouldn't call a rat's nest beautiful or a fucking plague-ridden town beautiful, but there's still a beauty to it where, I don't know, like the textures are really good, the lighting is absolutely like fantastic, and the effects, like the weather effects and stuff, are nice. So when you're running through, like when the rain is hitting and you're on like a cobbled street and like the lamps are lighting and it's dark, the atmosphere is bright, like it's just fantastic. And yeah, it's again, that's another thing where it's like, even with the budget that like focus on, like, you know, these sort of publishers, the budgets aren't massive, but they still managed to create this world. And I think one thing that they did right was, a lot of games now are focused on, oh, let's make this big and open, and no, this game is really linear. And because it's linear, they could create those really nice environments and put more time into the story, which is something I wish a lot of these bloated games do. Even though story isn't like too big for me, but when games start to like bloat, you can see they put like, imagine, let's say for argument's sake, they had 50 million. You can see they put like 15 million of that budget into making it bloated and big. Whereas if they just made it slightly smaller and put 15, maybe 10 of that 15 into making the story better or whatever, it would have made it better. So that's where I think this game really excels. Sorry, I have to flip my hat around as my head is getting... No, we'll flip the hat back around as my head is getting itchy. So, yeah, the game is absolutely gorgeous, and I think, like, from the start, you're running through the forest, and then your dog dies, and then you don't really know what's going on. There's loads of shit happening. You're like, oh, this is very, you know, it's cool, it's interesting. And then after that, you go to, again, a cool forest beside a river, and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. But then you go into a town, and as you explore the town, everyone's running away from you because they don't know who you are, and they know there's a plague running around, and they don't want to interact with people that they don't know. It kind of reminds me of Bloodborne in that way. And then as you're walking through, there's like piles of dead bodies, and there's big crosses on the doors, obviously meaning that these are infected people, don't go into these houses. And then eventually the village people, they're having like a lynching basically, and you like stumble upon it, and then they see you and they're like, oh, you're new, we have to kill you. And then you're like running. And then that's where like, so the game is like a stealth. It's a stealth game, which I love stealth games. I love, I know Hitman is kind of like the best example of stealth games recently, but Hitman isn't. That's more like social stealth, which is the stealth I don't really like. I prefer like Dishonored or even something like Styx, or there's a really good game called Ghost of a Tale. I prefer that sort of stealth rather than social stealth. I just spilled water all over myself, but anyway. And I think the stealth mechanics in this are solid. So the mechanics that they give you to interact with the environment and the enemies are great, but the stealth, like the AI of the enemies, is a bit stupid. Which, I mean, I know this probably sounds like a cop-out. Like, they have to make cuts somewhere, and I would rather have this sort of, it's not completely brain dead AI, but it's very easy to manipulate. So I'd rather have this very easy to manipulate stealth AI and give me some tools that have some fun with the stealth. So at the start, you're very limited. You have like a stone and a sling that you can throw to distract enemies or to daze them. Excuse me, I have to burp now. So throughout the whole game, you are holding Hugo's hand, so Hugo follows you. And you can tell him to stop, and you can tell him to go into little vents and stuff and hide in tall grass. So at the start, it's like really basic. And then you get into like the first combat encounter, which I thought, I don't know, like maybe like this game would have been potentially better if this didn't happen. But like the boss fight there's this big like armored knight, and he has two straps on the back of his helmet. So he has to like swing, and then when he gets dazed, you have to go behind him, and you have a sling, and you throw it. And then you take his helmet off, and then you hit him on the head, and then he's dead. But like, at the start, I'm going to use the word ludonarrative dissonance because that's a word that everybody loves. So at the start, Amicia is really, really affected by killing that soldier. She's like, at like the cutscene after, she's like, oh my god, and all that. And then eventually, you just get to a stage where you upgrade your sling so much and stuff that you just indiscriminately just pinging heads and killing people. So, I mean, there's like maybe a small bit you can say in the narrative. She does grow a bit hard, and the sort of childlike wonder does go because she has to grow up really quickly. But I don't know. I think it is a bit of a mix up on the part of the narrative. It doesn't feel 100% with how that deals with it. But I mean, it's very difficult. I can't really think of a game that did that sort of stuff well. So, like, you know, Joel in The Last of Us, like, talking, oh yeah, well, I'm kind of a good guy-ish, kind of, but I'm also a bad guy. And throughout the game, he's probably killed, like, 150 people, you know. So, back to the mechanics. So, you have a few things. So, you have a rock and a sling that you could throw to distract enemies, and then you can use your sling to damage enemies. And then as you go along, you can start brewing potions because you meet this little alchemist kid, and he's really cool. He was like an alchemist apprentice, and he was like 10. He was a bit older. He's a bit older than Hugo, and he's like really mature. And he's like he teaches you how to craft potions that can do different things. Like one of them can lure the rats. This was probably the best part, like the best sort of the best mechanic when it comes to interacting with the enemies. So I haven't even spoken about the rats, but the whole thing about the rats is they don't like light. So a lot of the puzzles and stealth sections around the rats are you having to navigate with light to get through the rats. So, you know, at one point he teaches you how to throw something that sets things on fire, but then he also teaches you how to throw something that extinguishes flames. So eventually, like, the stealth sections will be, oh, there's a torch there. Okay, well, I need to figure out how to light that. So you light it, and then you can move into that section. But then what's really cool with the thing that you can use to extinguish the flames is that you'll see a soldier walking around and you'll have a torch, and there's rats everywhere, and the rats won't touch it because the flames are there. But you have this little sling thing that extinguishes it, so you extinguish the flame, and then all of a sudden it gets eaten by rats, and it's kind of disturbing. It's actually really grotesque, and it looks even more grotesque in A Plague Tale Requiem. I can't wait for the game. So there's like loads of cool little mechanics, and eventually there's like puzzles where you have these, like, you can see that the plague has happened before, and they have built certain structures in the world to deal with the rats. So your kind of hub that you get is not really, it's kind of a hub, like, but it's not a hub in the traditional sense. Like, you kind of, a few chapters start there and then you leave. You know, you can interact with characters, but there's, you know, there's not much to it. But in the hub, it's kind of like a castle. The whole thing to get into that hub is a puzzle around using lights to push the rats into a pit. So I really like that touch that you can see that the world is starting to, like, evolve to deal with the rats. So you have these torches that you move, and they become a very, like, integral part of the puzzles. And in general, the puzzles are pretty fun. Nothing too difficult, which I like. It's, you know, pulling a lever to lift something and then calling the character over to grab something, and then you're pulling a box and climbing up, and then you're dodging the rats. Like, it's simple, but it's fun. It's engaging. It's enough to keep the pacing, to slow the pacing down enough so that you're not running through the game in 3 hours, but they also feel like worthwhile rather than just like bogging the story down. And, you know, if you've watched the channel, I don't like, sorry, my leg is itchy here. If you watch the channel, I don't like puzzles. So games that have puzzles that are, like, you know, somewhat entertaining, not too hard, they're my perfect kind of puzzles, and these have them. And then again, when you bring into that sort of environmental interaction, like extinguishing the flames and luring rats to different parts, like, it gets quite fun. So I'm reading my notes here. Decent stealth, good mechanics, yes. Hitting people in the head, luring the rats, yes, grand. So there is like a progression system in it where you speak about, where you run around, and throughout the world there's like different side paths and you collect stuff. So they're just basic upgrade materials. Again, something similar to what The Last of Us does, where you just, you know, you find like a few cloths and maybe something else. I forget what the exact is, like sulfur and stuff. And then, like, you can upgrade your sling, you can upgrade your stealth, you can upgrade like how much ammo you can carry, things like that. And it's like it's a decent progression system. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing too great to write home about. Eventually your sling becomes really powerful, and that's kind of the part where I think the gameplay kind of slips a bit, because I like the feeling of being trapped and kind of scared, because at the end of the day, Amicia and Hugo are like 15 and 6 or 7 years old, so they should be afraid of soldiers. Because soldiers are scary, and they're in big armor, and they have big swords, and they can kill you, and they can do worse things to kill you as well. So, yeah, I think near the end, near the end, I had these things that you could throw that would like suffocate the humans with the humans with heads, the humans with helmets, and then they take off their helmet, and then you just and sling. But eventually, you can upgrade your sling so that you can have 2 rocks per sling, so like you like quickly attack them. So I think she becomes Amicia becomes too powerful at the end, and enemies aren't really that much of it like a hassle anymore. Now the later encounters do get really fun. Like, they get very in depth. Like, there's loads of, like, you go in and it's a big courtyard, and there's like 6 different paths you can go, and there'll be like a guy here, and, you know, there's a light here, so here, and there's rats in a cage. So if you open that cage and get rid of this light, then, you know, so there is loads at play. So they are fun, but again, I wish Amicia wasn't so powerful near the end. And then, like, when it comes to the gameplay, there's one part that, like, really bothered me. There was really bad checkpoints. Like, they felt like PS2 checkpoints, where one in particular I can remember, there was, like, 2 back-to-back stealth sections that they were quite difficult to get right. And so you did one stealth section, kind of had a little breathing space, and then a second stealth section. So I assumed if I did the first stealth section, got to the breathing space, that's where a checkpoint would be. No. So the checkpoint isn't there. The checkpoint's at the start of the first thing. So I went first stealth encounter, breathing space, got about halfway through the second stealth encounter. Now, this could have been a glitch, but it did happen a few times in different areas, so I don't think it was a glitch. And then I got sent back to the start of the first one. I mean, regardless if it's a glitch or not, it's still stupid. So there was a few times where the checkpoints just didn't feel great. So I think after that, it's probably like the characters. So I think Hugo and Amicia are like strong characters. Their relationship is well built throughout the story, and like, to be honest, at the start I really didn't like Hugo, but maybe that was the point of the game. He was kind of like a bratty kid that just wanted his mom, which, I mean, fair enough, because his mom did look after him his whole life, and he was only like 6 and he was sick. And Amicia was strong, but she was still like, she was a bit bratty too, because she was pissed off at Hugo because she obviously didn't get the time with her mom, who was now dead. So, like, at the start I didn't really like them. Near the end I really liked them. So I mean, that's good character development. And again, I think like those childlike moments that I mentioned at the start of the video, they really help sell it. But as it goes along, you can see that both of the characters mature, and like they have to, because the shit situation they're in. And I think the other characters are like, I like the alchemist boy, I forget his name. I did complete this game like 3.5 weeks ago, so like it's been a while. So I think the little alchemist boy, he was a good character. I enjoyed him. He was very, he took me by surprise because he was very mature, where I was expecting him to be kind of like Hugo, but he's nowhere near Hugo. If anything, he's almost like more mature than Amicia. And then you have these two like thieves, a brother and a sister, and I get that they are roughly the same age as Amicia, maybe slightly older. And the brother I didn't really care for. I don't really think he had much of a character, but the sister was a good character, and you could see that her and Amicia actually, like, they got along. And I think that's where Amicia's, like, some of Amicia's best moments were, because like they were like they could relate to each other, because they were both like, you know, 16, 17, whatever age they are. Whereas, you know, throughout the story, Amicia doesn't really have anyone to relate to, because like Hugo's a 6-year-old boy, and then the alchemist son is like, or the alchemist apprentice is like 10. So there's nobody there that she can sort of like bounce off. So I think this is a game about characters and not story, because as I said, the characters are well developed. I liked how they went along, but the story itself kind of fell off near the end, because at the start I enjoyed that it was pretty grounded. Like, you know, a plague caused by rats has happened in the past, and, you know, it was set in a realistic, grounded location. And yeah, that was like, I enjoyed that part of it. But then as it went on, I don't really want, like, I won't completely spoil it, but it kind of became a bit supernaturally, and there was like one part. So eventually Hugo, because of his disease, he can control the rats. Okay, I don't really have an issue with that, but like, the main bad guy, he's basically like the Pope, and he's like Emperor Palpatine kind of a character, and I don't know, it just didn't feel right. It felt too out there, because he was like injecting himself with the blood of Hugo. That's why he wanted to steal him, and and then the final boss, again, I won't spoil it, but I think it just, you know, it went a bit too far for my liking. But then the rats. I mean, the rats are the most interesting part of this game, because rats are interesting. I mean, that's basically it. And when that was some very good analysis there, but I mean, when like as I said, the French setting is cool, but the coolest part is the rats. And at the start, like the mystery they build, like you just hear like the ground as you're running back to your castle. You just hear like the ground erupting. You're like, what the fuck is going on here? I don't know why I bleep myself. But then you like, as you go along, you see the shit that the rats have done, and it's disgusting. Like it's really disgusting, and the technology in the Plague Tale Requiem looks even more disgusting. So I can't wait to see what that looks like. But like you're walking around these battlefields where the French and the English had fought, and there's just rats crawling everywhere, and there's like just blood, and all you hear is the little rat noises. And then another thing they do with the music, they use like, I don't know if it's a violin, but it's like it's a string instrument, maybe like a violin or cello or whatever, and they do that really like, you know, that really scratchy noise. So like as you get close to the rats, like you hear and it's like, oh yeah. But like it gets really like unsettling around the rats, which is like the perfect atmosphere. And then obviously if you take into account how brilliant the graphics are, it's a very unsettling game. I played it completely with headphones on, which is something I don't usually do very often anymore, because I usually listen to podcasts or something while I'm playing a game. But for a game like this, I was completely engrossed in it. And then like how, obviously, as I said, how they introduce the rats mechanically is great, and how you can, you know, interact with the environment to lure them to places and to kill enemies and stuff. It's great. And at one point there was actually a trophy, so I was looking out for the trophies in this game. I didn't platinum it, but I got a lot of the trophies, and there was one and it said save the soldier. I was like, oh, at one point I'm going to be able to make a decision. Now I don't really think it ultimately changes anything like in the narrative or anything, but like there was one part where there's a soldier pressed up against a grate, and he has a light beside him, and there's rats right in front of him, and the light goes out, and you can choose to reignite it or just let the rats kill him. And I saved them for the trophy. And yeah, but maybe it might have changed that encounter, because then Amicia said to him like, you can't tell your friends that we're here, and he's like, okay, I won't. So maybe it might have changed something in the future, like in the next like stealth encounter. But yeah, that was cool. But the last thing I kind of want to mention about it is the rats' nests. They are disgusting. Like you're walking through and the walls are like flesh, and you're walking with a torch, and again that little violin music, and then there's like different parts where you have to like crawl underneath grates to finish these puzzles, and you're like crouching, and there's like rats' nests all around you, and the rats are crawling everywhere, and it's like really good. Like if you don't like rats, I don't mind rats. Well, I mean, obviously, if I had a rat in my house, I wouldn't like it, but I don't, like, generally, I don't, like, have a fear of rats or anything. If you have a fear of rats, you cannot play this game. Like, simply, no, just don't play this game. And Plague Tale Requiem looks even more rat-like. It looks like I remember the trailer where all the rats were falling over each other in the streets. So, again, I can't wait for that game. And, yeah, this, like, I'm so glad I played A Plague Tale Requiem. It was a game that I started, I think when it came out on PlayStation Plus, it might have been September of last year. Played it for like an hour, and then something else came out, and I got lost, like I just kind of fell off it. And then I started it up whenever it was, 3 weeks ago, and I beat it in it felt like I beat it in 3 or 4 days. Now it was only short, maybe like 12, 15 hours, but it felt like I beat it in like, you know, long chunks, like 3-4 hour sittings, and I played it for like 4 days or whatever. And I am really glad, because like I love AA games, like even the pretty shit ones. Like the first Styx wasn't great. I'd never played Styx 2, but like I enjoyed parts of them. And then Elix 1 had like some good parts, but some pretty janky parts. And Elix 2, from what I played of Elix 2, I thought was a big step down from Elix 1. What other games do we have? Greedfall, like any games like that. Like there's something special about them games when they're done well. Even the ones that aren't done well, like again, Elix has like different parts. Like the factions in Elix are like really strong. And I also like that in Elix, when you start the game, literally anything can kill you. Because, you know, you play games like Skyrim or Fallout or Dragon Age or any of these open world like RPGs, and Like, there's not really any danger unless you literally go to a place where the enemies are too high level. But in a game like Elix, you can die to, like, literally a chicken. So, like, there's different parts of these games, but I think A Plague Tale just feels like The Last of Us, but less budget. Where there are certain bits that are slightly, like, less high quality. Like, I think, like, some of the facial animations are okay, but the character animations, definitely some jank there. Some of the voice line delivery in English is pretty ropey, but, like, and then obviously the stealth AI is, like, you know, leaves much to be desired, but, like, the graphics are gorgeous. I mean, the world is the world is beautiful, but it's also disgusting. It's a unique setting with, like fair enough if you have a plague-ridden medieval town, you know, that's not specifically unique. But when you have the rats that, like, you know, in a normal game there might be 4 rats on a corner, and when you walk near them they scurry. But if you walk near the rats here, they jump on you and eat you. And then they have the rat's nests that are just disgusting. And then the characters themselves are actually, like, well developed too, and there's some really beautiful moments. So yeah, I think, like, A Plague Tale Innocence is definitely a recommend. Like, it was free on PS Plus. You could probably buy it for, like, €20 now, or $20, whatever. But, like, I would highly, highly recommend it. And if A Plague Tale Requiem is even half of the game that A Plague Tale Innocence is, then I can see that game being great. But so far from the trailers I've watched, the game looks fantastic, and I cannot wait to play it. So yeah, there's a half an hour of me rambling about A Plague Tale. Treat this like a podcast. The channel has been doing, like, absolutely, like, I'm almost monetized, which is mad, because I dipped, and then I got that Steam Deck video, and then the Dawnkeeper short did well, and then my Overwatch 2 review did well too. Like, the channel is on the up. I just have to keep riding this wave. So I'll have a Ghostwire Tokyo video out soon enough. I almost have that edited. That might be maybe not next week, because I have 2 potential games that I'm reviewing next week, and one of them being A Plague Tale Requiem, depending on how fast I finish it. But I do have a Ghostwire Tokyo because I wanted to play a spooky game. So yeah, thank you for watching. Twitter, Discord, subscribe, like the video. I mean, if you're listening to this, then I should hope you're subscribed. If not, please subscribe, like the video. There we go. Goodbye. I'll see you all on the next video. Goodbye.